Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikita and I'm a therapist in Toronto. And on this channel we talk about diversity and inclusion of BIPOC stories, especially South Asian stories, both in fiction and literature as well as in real life. So you can expect a lot of book talks, book recommendations, book chats, as well as my podcast called Brown People Problems. So for the month of January, I read 4 BIPOC stories that are by BIPOC authors and about the lives of BIPOC characters. Incidentally, I read them all on my trusty KOBO, whether they were borrowed from my local library or they were bought, but they're all on here on my KOBO, and I don't actually have physical copies of these, but I will of course link them all down below. If you're wondering about my KOBO, I believe the KOBO Libra 2. Came out a couple years ago in 2020, I believe 3 years ago now in 2020, and it's great. So if you are like me and you have very little space left on your bookshelf for your books, then a KOBO is a great investment. So the very first BIPOC story that I read in the month of January is Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is marketed as a cozy mystery, but it was actually this hilarious story about Medi, who's our main protagonist, and how she ends up accidentally killing her date. And so she needs to lean on her aunties, so her mom and her mom's sisters, who are quite meddlesome, but need to lean on them for support. So the story follows Jessie and her aunties, and they are a Chinese-Indonesian family, and just what this whole ordeal looks like of dealing with a body as they kind of go about life. And I really love how the author really incorporated obviously humor and satire and things like that, but our Medi, who's our main character, she really faces some of the same kind of struggles that I think a lot of children of immigrants or a lot of minority individuals face in the West, especially around navigating their dual cultural identities, fitting in, and really sort of leading this dual life that I think a lot of us lead. You know, on the one hand there's that Western persona, and on the other hand there can be the part of us that fits in more with the culture. So the story really follows Medi and like how her aunts are really there for her throughout it all, which I think, as meddlesome as they are, I love the family aspect in this book, and how family first is such a huge value in a lot of Eastern cultures, and the author did such an incredible job of capturing that in a capacity that was funny, but in a capacity that's really relevant. If you're a BIPOC individual and you read this story, you are going to probably feel a lot of frustration that I felt when I was observing these family dynamics. But then you will also appreciate and you'll also feel a lot of gratitude for the same family dynamics and how her aunts did not throw her under the bus, and they were really kind of helping her through it. And I think that was really lovely. It really makes you reflect on your own cultural dynamics. It makes you reflect on your own cultural upbringing, your cultural values, and what it really looks like to navigate these dual cultural identities. And the second book I read was again by the same author, and it's a sequel to Dial A for Aunties, and that one's called 4 Aunties and a Wedding. Again, same author, Jessie Q. Sutanto, and it's a sequel, like you can imagine. So the first book is done and over with, and now you have Medi, or Madeline, who's our main character, and she's getting married. Obviously, something happens that maybe involves the mafia, or it involves murder, and it's really funny. I personally found the first one better. I thought the storyline was better. It felt less far-fetched, but if you're looking for something that's quite like realistic in terms of comedy, then this may not be it for you. But again, a really lovely story of how a young Chinese-Indonesian woman navigates traditional Chinese-Indonesian family and what that looks like for her. And all of this is on the back cover, so I'm not ruining anything. But I believe the person that she's getting married to is half Caucasian and half Chinese. And again, there's a bit of a melting pot of different cultures as well. And again, the author does a really good job of adding perspective to then what it looks like to marry a little bit outside of your culture, or what it looks like to marry into a family, I guess, that is a little bit different than your own, and you're now navigating that family dynamics, that family's culture, your family's culture. It's really funny. I really enjoyed these two books. I think this author is lovely. She has such an incredible way of like really capturing like your innermost thoughts and struggles as children of immigrants or as BIPOC individuals. I would highly recommend. The next book that I read was called Independence by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. I made a whole other video, and I'll sort of like put it up here somewhere, about 5 books that every South Asian feminist must read, and 3 of her books out of the 5 were on that list. Chitra Banerjee just came out with a new book called Independence. I think I got it the day after it came out, and I listened to it on Audible, and I was also able to secure a copy through my library on my KOBO, and I followed along the audiobook as well as the actual physical book. And you know, sometimes when you're anticipating a book from an author that you like, it can be a hit or miss because there's a lot of hype around it, but honestly this book was just absolutely incredible. So this story is set in 1946 in pre-independence India, as India is still fighting for its freedom in the region of West Bengal, and it follows 3 sisters who I believe are in their early 20s or late teens. The 3 sisters are Deepa, Jananie, and Priya. And the story spans from 1946 to a year or so after independence. And it's such a lovely story of what it looked like at that time to navigate the economic issues that come out of partition, the actual process of partition, and how the lives of these young women were impacted. So of course it's a historical fiction. There are some words of Bengali, but I think she also, the author also offers an English translation, so it's not like you'll be feeling lost in the book. But it really follows each sister and their own personal struggles that are very kind of central to their own personal struggles that are really central to coming of age, which a lot of women go through, but then in the larger context of partition and partition trauma and the fights around independence and what it looked like for them to navigate this dilemma, global dilemma, national dilemma, while also growing up. Chitra Banerjee's books tend to be just very beautifully told. All the stories are really beautifully told, and there's a really nice flow to them. I didn't even realize how fast I flew through this book. And as someone who is South Asian, I was born and brought up in India, and I have a set of cultural values that I feel close to. There was still so many things about the partition and what went down that I didn't know about. So I think this is such a lovely book for everyone to read because it really sheds a light on what the partition trauma was like, what was the partition process like, and we might know sort of the general overview of it, but if you really zoom into people's lives, what are even some of these like what we might call small t traumas or micro traumas that can significantly impact a person and what that looked like. This book is quite fast paced, as you can imagine. Each chapter alternates perspective of different sister, and it is I guess a bit of a serious read, so it's not something that you would kind of read on a beach if you want to relax and forget your troubles. I really appreciate Chitra Banerjee's writing style, and so this book was very easy for me to get through. I believe I got through it in a couple days, and I don't know if anyone else has had a similar experience, but I personally have not come across many fiction books, many historical fiction books that are set around independence or pre-independence India, or that are centered, the plot is centered around the process and the fight and the struggle for independence from colonialism. This was such a fresh take for me, so if anyone watching this knows any like similar types of books that you think I would like, please link them below. I love reading history, I love reading historical fiction, and this is a subgenre that I definitely have not read ever. So I was very happy to get into this book, and I think everyone should read it. And the very last book I read by a BIPOC author in the month of January is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. Now, I totally slept on this book. I have no idea why I did not pick it up sooner. It's been out for years. Everyone's been talking about it for years. It was, I think, on Reese Witherspoon's list as well, her book club list, and I for reasons I cannot recall, I don't know why I didn't pick it up early, but I finally did, and I think I finished it in 2 days. Such a Fun Age follows a story of a black female protagonist who is, I believe, in her early mid-20s, and it follows her relationships with the child she babysits, as well as the white woman, the white family that she works for. So I would describe this as a domestic drama or as a domestic fiction because it all takes place in the present day. There are some elements of the past that somehow find their way into the present, and I'm not going to give anything away, but that was a really nice twist. But essentially it's a story about how our female protagonist really just kind of navigates racism, microaggressions, classism as a young Black woman and what that looks like. And usually books like these are really heavy, or they can leave you feeling really kind of weighed down. And we obviously still need to keep reading this stuff. It is important for us to keep educating ourselves and having our eyes open to all different experiences, but this book did not leave me feeling weighed down in any way. It is a really lovely story. It was very, very fast paced. I really appreciate Kylie Reid's writing. It's very succinct. It's straightforward. It's to the point. I don't always appreciate books that are very poetic or lyrical in writing. So this was a really great story. So if you like conversations around race, privilege, class, racial inequity, racial discrimination, you would like this book because the author does a really good job of shedding some light on the nuances, right, that are part of racial discrimination. Because often even people who think they are woke or educated end up engaging in practices that are quite racist or quite discriminatory. And the author really highlights this well in this book. So I really appreciated this book. I'm gonna, right after this, go ahead and look up what else Kylie Reid has written or what she's planning on writing because I absolutely love this book. The story just does jump around in terms of perspective, chapter to chapter. So some chapters are from the main character's point of view, some are from like her employer's point of view, but the story doesn't jump around too much. It's quite linear and sequential. So I really appreciated that, and that made it so much of an easier read for me personally. So that's it. Those are the 4 books that I read in the month of January by BIPOC authors, and that include BIPOC stories. I encourage everyone to broaden their scope of reading to make sure that we're being mindful of the stories that we are consuming. There is a fellow YouTuber, South Asian YouTuber from Toronto, Jananie. I will link her channel below. She's really lovely. And she's recently started this challenge called Read in Color, which is essentially that for every white author that we read, we also read a BIPOC author. And I totally love that. I absolutely love that. She has some really great recommendations on BIPOC reads, so check her out. And I will again link all these books down below. If you have any recommendations for me based on what I've shared today, please share them with me. I would love them because I'm always adding on to my TBR list of BIPOC authors. And if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe down below. I will see you in my next one.